Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Career Quest. My name is Caitlin, and today I am joined with Charlie Huguenard. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on this interview today. Do you want to just give a little introduction to yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Caitlin.
Yeah.
So my name's Charlie Huguenard. I make experiential media. To me, that means video games, virtual reality, mixed reality, augmented reality, interactive art installations, and things like that. Um, so I spent about 20 years doing that, and I started in video games. I spent some time making interactive art installations. I spent some time working in VR and mixed reality. And now I run a company called Impractical Instruments, and we make what I call experiential media, immersive art, interactive art, um, melding physical spaces and digital spaces.
Cool. That's awesome. Got a really, really cool background. Um, Sweet. Well, I'm just going to jump right in, ask you a couple questions. So you've worked on some really creative and high-tech projects, from video games to immersive art experiences. What first sparked your interest in this kind of work, and then how did you turn it into a career?
Yeah, it's a great question. I didn't plan on doing this. I went to school for music, and I studied music production and computer music, and jazz saxophone. Um, and then I was introduced to someone who was making a video game that was about scratch DJing, and I thought that was pretty cool. And I went and worked on that for a little bit as a sound designer and a game designer, and I found out I really enjoyed it. And also, I had some programmers on the team who let me kind of learn how to code on the job. And so I kind of caught the bug, and I spent my nights and weekends learning how to code and learning how to make video games in
Yeah.
my free time. And I realized that like I can make a career out of this, so I did.
Yeah. There you go. Um, So I think a lot of students think that they either have to be creative or technical in the professional world. Um, I think a lot of times your work tends to blend both of those. How do you use creativity and problem solving together in your job?
Yeah, you're right. I do tend to blend both of those things. I have very much an engineering mindset when it comes to process and when it comes to making things. I think about, well, what are the end goals? What are the steps that I need to take to get there? How can I break this down into smaller problems
Mhm.
so I can actually make some progress and actually be able to measure
Yep.
that I'm making progress? Um, but even the technical solutions require some level of creativity. A lot of times I'm trying to invent a solution to something that hasn't been done or hasn't been done in that way before.
Yeah.
Um, so you have to, think outside the box, or maybe another way to put it is that you have to think about what you would do if you didn't already have any idea how to do it.
Yeah. 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 I think that's a great example or a great way to word that. Um, I think it's super important to have, that balance of you got to have A, B, C, and D, but then what are A, B, C, D, E, F, G creative solutions to those original things that we have. So that's awesome. And along those same lines, I think it's something that I've seen in my time in school or just kind of going into the workforce. I think students can worry about going into the workforce and pursuing something you're passionate about or something that you know that you really love, and then finding yourself feeling really burnt out and lacking that passion anymore. How do you find yourself avoiding that burnout or being like, I never want to touch, a video game again or design something or, work kind of on the musical elements of it?
Well, I can say in the past I haven't avoided it, and I definitely have had some episodes of pretty severe burnout, and to the point where I've quit the business for periods of time,
Yeah.
or just left a company to go do something completely different.
Mhm.
Um, I say that on one hand, it is avoidable, and I learned that after some years of failing at balancing my, sort of physical and mental health with my work and
Sure.
this thing that I'm really interested in doing,
Yeah.
but I'm maybe spending a little too much time doing it.
Mhm.
And then that was definitely not improved, or actually was kind of encouraged. That behavior was kind of encouraged by the video game industry of about 10, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
where it was common for video game companies to have, what they would call it, crunch time for months on end. And I learned after a while that that's not sustainable, for one, and two, I learned some good and some not so good ways to stand up for myself,
Yeah.
to the people that I was working with, the people I was working for. Um, and now I think, after, a couple decades of doing it, I've learned how to navigate this environment that does require you to be really engaged. But also requires you to take care of yourself so you can contribute to it in the way that you want to.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe that was a long-winded way of saying that balance is really important.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I think that goes with any career. Finding a good balance is just so important. Um, do you see in your line of work that there's like, I think this is kind of a personal interest, but more of like a corporate corporate side of like game design and all those different elements, and then there's a more creative side, or is there really just a balance that you see?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen, so I've worked at a lot of companies, and I've worked for myself in a variety of businesses, and I've seen a wide variety of workplace environments. Everything from the more corporate, large video game publishers that have, offices that look like kind of gray boxes with a lot of
Mhm.
cubicles in them, to kind of more what I would call, like, the more modern tech company vibe of, I worked at Facebook, years ago,
Cool.
and it was a giant expansive campus that was very open and bright and colorful
Yeah.
and comfortable, and they kind of had everything taken care of for you
Mhm.
so you could focus on your job.
Yeah.
Um, and then, I've worked at, I've worked at my own companies where, I've been in a tiny little room working by myself, or working remotely with people.
Yeah.
I've worked at, like, when I worked at Meow Wolf, we were in an old bowling alley that
That's cool.
we had turned into an art exhibit and workspace,
Mhm.
and eventually moved our workspace into an old tractor factory.
That's
Um,
really cool.
and there were people painting and welding, and we had a little sound room, and we had, electronics studios and all kinds of stuff going on, all in this huge space.
Yeah.
And long-winded answer, but really, there's a wide variety of
Yeah.
places you can work in this
Nice.
business.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's important to know with yourself. Like, some people work really great in an office setting, and like you need that focus. You need, to be able to just kind of lock in. And sometimes the cubicle is great for that. But then I think, there's some people who really thrive with a little bit of chaos and having different things going on to feel that creativity. So I think it's really interesting to hear that, there's just a mix of it. Um, so you've worked at Activision, Epic Games, Telltale Games, and several other game development studios. What was that like?
Well, again, it definitely ran the gamut.
Mhm.
When I worked at Activision, I was in a office that looked like, it could have been an insurance company.
Mhm.
When I was at Epic, I worked remotely and worked out of my tiny little extra bedroom.
Yeah.
Um, and when I was at Telltale, it was a similar kind of, like, game studio vibe, where it
Mhm.
was like kind of drab, but also kind of like posters and little minifigs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Everybody kind of decorated their own space.
Nice.
Um, and in terms of the work environment and the people, um, I've been really lucky. I've always been surrounded by creative people who care about other people,
Mhm.
and to want to either create an experience that's enriching in some way or comforting in some way,
Yeah.
or wants to provoke thought and provoke a sense of community and belonging with other people.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's really, really cool to hear. And I feel like something really uh valuable in a workplace for sure.
Mm.
Um, is there a game or a project that really stands out to you that you've worked on lately?
Um, well, lately, yes. But I want to go back to actually one of the first games I worked on.
Yeah.
I worked QA at Electronic Arts, and I worked on a game called Spore.
Mhm.
And it was, kind of an early game where people could contribute their own content to the game. So you can make these creatures and then have them evolve and then have them show up in somebody else's game. And that was pretty interesting. That was pretty eye-opening for me because I hadn't seen anything like that
Yeah.
prior to that. But also there was a small team working on sound and music in Spore, and they decided to um, plug in what was previously a system only really used in academia for kind of nerdy computer music
Mhm.
into the game engine, and make it so that the music was being constantly generated and never really repeated, and responded
Cool.
to what was going on in the game.
Yeah.
And that really set off a light bulb for me because after that, I kind of was on a crusade for, 10 or so years where I wanted to create tools for people to make more stuff like that.
Yeah.
More procedural, generative music, more music that was written on the fly and responding to, people's input.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I think I've definitely noticed the longer I've played games, having cool elements like that really make a game. A cool soundtrack, cool noises, making it really interactive is what makes that experience so cool. So I think that's really awesome. Um, so say if someone approached you and told you that they wanted to start building skills for this kind of career right now,
Mm.
what's something simple they could do today without like having any expensive equipment?
I think the most important thing really is to learn how you learn best,
Mhm.
and then have a practice of just constantly learning something new.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be something big. It doesn't have to be a programming language or, a new piece of technology or something like that. It could be like, you know, practicing playing chess, or it
Yeah.
could be learning Spanish or whatever, it could be it could be something simple. The important thing I think is to have an attitude that you're always going to be learning.
Yeah.
You never get to a point where you stop learning
Mhm.
in your career, especially in a creative business.
Sure.
Um, so that's something that I think most people or a lot of people are already doing, but that's really easy to get started.
Yeah. I think that's great advice. Just having a lot of applicable skills is huge, and then
Yeah, and
transferable, you
you
go
know,
places, learn things.
yeah, and one of the cool things that happens is if you have that practice,
Mhm.
um, after 20 years, you've got such a wide variety of skills that you can put them together in ways that hasn't been done before, and you can
Yeah.
make really cool stuff that, is satisfying to you and exciting for you, but also probably exciting for other people.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think selfishly, I wanna know if you could pick any video game world to exist in, what would you pick?
uh, so I worked on a game about 10 years ago called Watam,
Mhm.
and it was by Keita Takahashi, who made Nobi Nobi Boy, Katamari Damacy,
Mhm.
um, some other kind of silly, kind of whimsical games.
Yeah.
And we created this world where, you could play as any of the characters and you could switch between them on the fly.
Yeah.
And it was this kind of ragtag community of like a mayor and a golden poop and like a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
bunch of
yeah.
people,
Yeah.
a whole bunch of these like weird characters that just kind of interacted with each other in interesting ways, and you could make them interact in interesting ways. And I think if I had to live in any game world, it would be that one because it was weirdly comforting
Yeah.
to have this, I don't know, this kind of seemingly incongruous, sort of group of
Yeah.
characters coexisting and conflicting, and just kind of being in this like little tornado of of personalities.
Yeah. I love that. That seems really cool. I'll have to check it out. I think I'll always have a soft spot for, like, the Zelda games, and that's where I would
Me too.
yeah.
And I'm still looking for something that captures the feeling of playing Ocarina of Time.
Yes. Oh, so good. Um, awesome. Well, is there anything you'd like to say to our viewers before we wrap things up here?
Um, the main thing is to just keep learning. It really does make a difference, and it
Yeah.
really does lead to a really fun experience.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some really great insight into your work and what you do. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin.